Let's open up our word, open up God's word to Joshua chapter 14. 저에게 하나님 주시는 말씀은 여호수아 14장 말씀입니다. We'll be reading first individually, so I recommend and ask that you would pull up your phones or open up your Bibles to the text. 제가 함께 읽기 전에 개인적으로 또 읽는 시간을 가질 거라 여호수아 14장 성경이나 핸드폰으로 함께 같이 읽으셨으면 좋겠습니다. Joshua chapter 14. Now give us a few minutes to read verses 6 through 15. 6절에서 15절 개인적으로 읽는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. Now, let's all read verses 10 through 12 together. 저희 10절부터 12절 말씀 함께 읽을 텐데 같이 동시에 편하신 언어로 봉독했으면 좋겠습니다. Let's recite all together in the language of our choice. Now then, just as the Lord promised, He has kept me alive for 45 years, since the time He said this to Moses, while Israel moved about in the wilderness. So here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out, and just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out, just as He said. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. 저에게 주신 하나님 말씀입니다. 영어로 설교하고 파워포인트로 띄우도록 하겠습니다. Let's look at some pictures together. 다음 두 장도 더 넘겨주시죠. Have you guys heard of the marshmallow experiment? Might be new to some of you. So a psychologist named Walter Mischel did a series of experiments on delayed gratification with kids around 4 and 6. And this experiment was done in the late 60s and early 70s. And the experiment began by bringing each child into a private room and sitting them down on a chair and placing a marshmallow and a table in front of them, like right up in front of their nose. And the researcher tells the child that he's going to leave the room, and that if the child does not eat the marshmallow right away, if the child waits while he's away, then they would be rewarded with another marshmallow. So if you eat it right away, you only get one. If you wait, you'll get two at the end. So however, if the child decides to eat the first one before the researcher comes back, then they would not get a second marshmallow, and the researcher left the room for 15 minutes. So the choice is very simple. You either get a marshmallow now, or you get 2 marshmallows later. And if you watch the YouTube video of this experiment, the reaction of each kid is pretty entertaining. Now some kids, they jump up and eat the marshmallow right away. Some kid shoves the marshmallow up their nose, trying to smell it. Some kid just licks it and puts it back down. And some kids, they get tired of waiting, so they wait for 10 minutes, and they eat it with a couple minutes left. And a few of the kids, they manage to wait the whole time, the whole 15 minutes. And when Walter Mischel and his research team followed up with these kids later in life, they discovered that the kids who waited for the second marshmallow, the kids who were able to delay their gratification, had a higher chance of success in life. I know that this is a little extreme, but these kids basically had 2 choices before them. Either you compromise with reality, or you have a better and brighter future. In Numbers chapter 13, God says to Moses, "Send some men to explore the land of Canaan. Send some people to explore the land of promise, which I'm giving to the Israelites." So listening to God, Moses sends 12 spies to check out the promised land before they go in. And 10 of the spies return and they say, the promised land, it does flow with milk and honey, but we don't stand a chance. They are a lot bigger and stronger than us. And they even have descendants of Anak. They are the giants. We are like dead meat. As soon as we enter in, we're not going to be able to fight and win the battle. And the people of Israel, they believe this negative report, and their hearts melt in fear. They cry and they complain. And they even say that it would have been better for them to die in Egypt, or even in the wilderness. But these people were people who have experienced God's redemption. They have experienced God's redemption from their slavery out of Egypt. They have witnessed even the parting of the Red Sea, and they even have walked through it. God has fed them through manna and quail, and God has protected them through day and night, through pillars of fire and pillars of clouds in the wilderness. But the Israelites are like the kids who couldn't wait for the promise. And they're like the kids who ate up the first marshmallow. They didn't have the faith to wait for the 2 marshmallows, to receive the 2 marshmallows as promised. The hopelessness that they saw with their eyes seemed greater and more real than the hope they had from God's promise. They forget all about how God has redeemed them. They forget all about God's promise to bring them into the promised land. So they give up. They harden their hearts and they disobey. But in today's passage, Caleb is different. In Numbers 13, Caleb silences the pessimism of the people and says, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Caleb is like a kid who waits and endures to receive 2 marshmallows. When Caleb was a spy, he was 40 years old. Some of us might think 40 is pretty old, but apparently according to the most recent United Nations age classification, ages 18 through 65 are considered youth. It's a surprise, right? 18 through 65 are considered youth. They say it's from UN, but the source is kind of unreliable. But anyways, they have come up with this new age classification to reflect the increase in average health and life expectancy. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is Caleb was in his prime when he went to spy the land and he was 40 years old. But in today's passage, in Joshua 14, Caleb is 85. Caleb is considered old even with the generous United Nations age classification. 45 years have passed since they spied the land. But this 85-year-old grandpa still hasn't given up. He's still waiting for his 2 marshmallows. He's just as passionate as he was 45 years ago. Let's read verses 10 through 12 with your eyes, and I'll read it. So Caleb says, "Here I am today, 85 years old, and I'm still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then." And he says, "Now give me this hill country, give me this mountain that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said." If Caleb has served the Lord faithfully for 85 years, he could have asked for an easier task, for a flat land, for a land with easy or no enemies. He could have been like, "God, give me a nice condo in a retirement home where there are lots of pretty grandmas." But instead, that's not what Caleb asks for, right? Instead, he asks for a mountain, which is much more difficult to occupy than a flat land. And this mountain that Caleb wants is full of giants, and its city is protected with great walls. And Caleb is basically saying, give me the most difficult assignment. Give me the most difficult task. Give me the hardest enemy in the most dangerous territory. And maybe to some of us, the example of faith, example of Caleb is inspiring. But to some of us, this 85-year-old man is intimidating. Now, honestly, sometimes the example of people like Caleb doesn't come as an encouragement, but it comes to us as a burden. Now, life is already difficult. Like, who wants to ask for a mountain, for a difficult task? And I think we sometimes find the pessimistic Israelites easier to relate to. It's not just them who settled for 1 marshmallow. Being discouraged and getting tired in the faith doesn't just happen to the Israelites. It happens to us too. And maybe some of us are in that place right now. Because faith isn't easy. Now, when things are going well, remaining faithful is a little challenge. But when trouble starts, when life gets difficult, when our lives are filled with failures, when we're going through a spiritual desert, we too are tempted to trade God's promise for one that is happier, easier, more upbeat, and less demanding. We trade God's promise for something that we can touch, something that we can see and hold with our hands. And just like the Israelites, when the hopelessness that we see with our eyes seems greater and more real than the hope that we hear in God's promise, we give up on the waiting and we eat the marshmallow that's in front of us. Instead of holding on to God's promise, we live according to what's good in our eyes. We compromise our faith with the ways of the world. We trust our experiences. We trust that what we see with our eyes, we trust what we see with our eyes a lot more than God's promise. And if we're really honest, we want our faith to be easy. We want God to give us good things. We want Him to give us stability and security in life. That's often how we begin our faith, but that's also how we continue in our faith oftentimes. But I want to ask us, I want us to ask ourselves if that's really the faith that the Bible teaches us. If that is really the life of discipleship that God invites us into. Brothers and sisters, we can't just settle for the faith of the Israelites. We should ask for a faith like Caleb. Caleb's bold request of saying, God, give me this hill country. I hear Jesus saying to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Christian life is not an invitation to success or pleasure or power. It's not an invitation to a problem-free life. But it is an invitation to a vision that is bigger than ourselves. One that's worth living for, dying for, and being brought back to life for. It's an invitation to a vision. To a vision that can make a difference in the world, and one that needs the best that we can give. Once there was a woman named Evelyn Brand, and when she was young, she felt called by God to go to India. And as a single woman in 1909, so it's like 110 years ago, a calling like that required a truckload of faith and an equal amount of determination. And when she went to India, she met this young man named Jesse, and they got married. And together they began a ministry to the people in rural parts of India, bringing them education and medical supplies, and building roads to reduce the isolation of the poor. But early in their ministry, they went 7 years without having a single person understand the message of Jesus. They went 7 years without having a single convert. But then one day, a priest of a local tribal religion, the priest developed a fever and grew deathly ill. And nobody else would go to him in the fear of being contaminated. But Evelyn and Jesse nursed this pagan priest as he was dying. And as he was nearing the death of his life, he said, this God, Jesus, must be the true God, because only Jesse and Evelyn will care for me in my death. And the priest even gave his children to them to care for them after he died. And that became a spiritual turning point in that part of the world, in that part of India. People began to really look at the life and teaching of Jesus, and more people started to follow him. And Evelyn and Jesse, they had 13 years of productive service to serving the Lord faithfully. And then one day, Jesse suddenly died of a disease. And by this time of her husband's death, Evelyn was 50 years old. And everyone back home, everyone in India, expected her to go back to her home in England. but she wouldn't do it. She was as feisty and passionate as Caleb. Now, she came to be known and loved in India as Granny Brand, and she stayed there for another 20 years. And her son, his name was Paul, and he came over to visit his mom when she was 70 years old. And this is what he said about his mom. This is how you grow old. Allow everything else to fall away until those around you see only love. Friends, brothers and sisters in Christ, if our goals in life are ease and comfort, we will not grow. We will not become the people that God calls us to become. Maybe we will even miss out on the best things that God is doing in this world. The kingdom of God that we invite into this place, which we talk a lot about at Hope Church, right? We talk a lot about the kingdom of God. This kingdom that we invite into this place, into our lives, the kingdom that Jesus says is within us and around us, it is a complex kingdom. It won't just continue to bless us in the ways that fulfill our definitions and our desires. It will and it must transform us. Now, at the beginning of the sermon, I talked about the marshmallow experiment. In the original study, they found that kids who are able to wait for 2 marshmallows, kids who are able to delay gratification, became more successful later in life. Now, they had higher exam scores, lower rates of substance abuse, better social skills, etc. But if we look at a more recent study of this same study, if we look at the most recent study of this study, they learned that the family environment that a child grows up in is more important than an individual's ability for self-control. So a child who grows up under reliable parents who keep their promises has a higher chance of waiting for the second marshmallow. But a child who grows up under parents who are unreliable, under parents who continue to break their promises, they have a higher chance of eating the marshmallow that's right in front of them. So the more reliable your family and your parents are, the better chances you have to succeed in life, and vice versa. And friends, this is what I want to share with us today. Our God is a reliable Father who keeps His promises. And we are His beloved children. It's not a matter of us having more faith and having more courage. It's a matter of how much do we know the reliability and the dependability of our Father. So in the end, how we come to faith like Caleb is not through our individual efforts and our own ability to have faith. Before we can come and ask, give me this mountain, we first have to experience the love of the Father, the dependability of the Father. We first need the experience of grace. Brothers and sisters, we first need to see Jesus who said, give me this mountain, and went to the cross of Calvary for you and for me. And it is my prayer that we'll experience that grace over and over again. Because only then, only when we experience that grace, when we realize the fact that it is our God who went to the hill for us first, only then can we have the courage to say, God, give me this mountain. And my prayer is that we'll find our strength and courage to climb the highs and the lows of our lives first in His grace and love. Let us pray together. 함께 기도하겠습니다. God, as we were reminded through your word today, when we read of Caleb's confession, God, give me this mountain, give me this hill country, we are challenged and almost even intimidated by his faith. And maybe we are even discouraged for our lack of faith. But God, thank you for reminding us today through your word that you went to that hill first. You went to the cross of Calvary, the hill of Calvary, to bear that mountain for us. And that's where we want to find our courage and strength to follow after you. So God, we pray that you strengthen us with the power of your Spirit and continue to remind us of your grace. 하나님, 오늘 말씀을 통해 갈렙의 믿음과 그의 믿음의 고백을 들을 때 저희는 이 산지를 내게 주소서라고 고백하지 못하는 저희의 믿음 없음과 연약함을 보며 좌절하고 낙심할 때가 있습니다. 하지만 하나님, 오늘 말씀을 통해서 하나님이 먼저 그 산에 오르셨음을 기억하게 하시면 감사합니다. 그 갈보리 산 언덕에서 저희를 위해 십자가를 먼저 지셨음을, 하나님이 저희를 제자로서 부르실 때 먼저 하나님께서 앞서 가신 길로 저희를 부르심을 저희가 기억하게 해주세요. 그리고 저희가 저희 신앙의 삶 가운데 낙심하고 낙담할 때 저희를 성령의 능력으로 채워주시고 힘을 주시고 하나님의 사랑과 은혜를 늘 기억하며 그 안에서 저희의 신앙의 힘을 발견할 수 있도록 도와주세요. 주님 사랑합니다. 감사합니다. 예수님의 이름으로 기도합니다.